Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the time for this interview. What do you think is the value of personality in the business world?
So look, I mean, I feel that, and I touched on it when I was talking downstairs as well, is that I feel that everyone is being programmed these days, you know? Everyone is being programmed in their own way, you know? It's like what you learn from your parents is accepted as that is the way to do it. When you go to school, you're taught a specific way. That is the way to do it. When you go into the workforce, you've got to learn their way of doing it, you know? So we're all programmed in that way. And I'm just all about like, stop, you know? Where is your, not your own identity, but where is your genius living, you know? Because your genius is being stifled because you're continually conforming to be the person that you think you ought to be, because that's the way you've been brought up, that's the way you've been educated. You're supposed to be that way. And I say, no, you cannot be that way. You have to bring out that inner child in yourself, you know? You've got to be that person that looks at the at life, looks at the world and embraces it, and so allows yourself to be the person that you are. And I think that's where personality comes into it. And everyone's personalities are very, very, very different. And what makes someone have a great personality is for them to embrace their inner differences, you know, not to hide from them or push them away or make them irrelevant, but to embrace it completely, you know.
And I guess sort of with regard to your own experience, how is your understanding of foreign cultures, which I understand is quite extensive, from being in countries such as France and South Africa, how has that helped you in your role in Alliance Abroad? And I guess in particular, which experiences have been especially meaningful throughout your education and career?
Good questions. So there's a number of things I heard there. I would say that, you know, as a 20-year-old, when I first left Scotland, that was my first foray into a country outside of what I would consider my home country, you know, my native country. Everything I've been talking about is about, you know, immersing yourself within that local culture, you know, living like a local, but that's a bit overused, that word, so I wouldn't quote that one, right? But, you know, just being part of the local fabric that's there. By doing that, you know, you're getting underneath the skin of what's going on. Once you tap into that, you know, it's kind of almost like there's a kind of quasi-parallel universe that's going on there. There's the surface, which everyone lives in, and then there's that piece that's just below it that's going just that bit deeper, you know, that's connecting in a way that the majority of people are not connecting. Now, I think that I gained that as a 20-year-old when I first set out on my travels, you know, when I first started meeting people and understanding that, you know, just like personal connections create, you know, much stronger ties and stronger bonds. So when I look at my job now with Alliance Abroad and the 42 countries that I'm working with as well, again, the one thing that holds everything together is that people are people. They're real people, right? And so for me, it's like, what is my connection with them? Now, the thing that does connect us is because we have a common interest, right? We share the same beliefs in terms of, you know, travel and international experiences. They shape the kind of person that you are, right? So we share that diversity and exposure to different cultures makes you a better person. So when you're coming from the same place, right, then why would it be difficult to not to be able to connect in a deeper level, right?
And sort of going off of that, I know you said in your speaker series lecture that Alliance Abroad works to build bridges. And I don't want to get too political, just putting that out in advance, but I guess sort of the United States in recent days has been concerned with building border walls. And I think it's fair to say in general that in the United States right now, it's been pursuing more isolationist policies with ramping up border security and imposing restrictive travel bans. And sort of how are you able to some degree anticipate some of those challenges in your work and address them?
You know, I think there's two different things. There's immigration policy, and then there is embracing culture. international cultures. And I think they're two very, very different things. An immigration policy is driven by government and it's driven by politics and, and whatever is going on at the time. And even this government has never ever said, do not travel and embrace foreign cultures, do not travel and not learn foreign languages, do not travel and not understand what this great world has got to offer. Those messages aren't coming out there. So I see two different things. There's always a need for immigration policy dependent upon what the country is, right? I mean, I was talking with the Irish government last week, and we were just talking about what's Ireland in a post-Brexit world going to be about. Now, they were the ones that said, we're a declining population. We have a very open migration policy. In Australia, it's something very similar as well, whereby for them, it's like we need to import a lot of talent. Within the US, we're like almost 350 million people, and the economy is still growing. There's going to be a point whereby current immigration policy does not satisfy the need that business actually has. So there will be a shift and there will be a change. But immigration policy has been talked about for 20 years and nothing's ever happened. So I'd say policy is one thing, embracing culture, embracing the world and all the wonders that it has to offer is something very, very different, and that's not influenced by politics.
Mm-hmm. When it comes in general to defining globalization and diversity, there's a lot of controversy surrounding exactly what they imply and what they entail. How would you define those terms?
Look, for me, globalization it's something I've only ever been involved in, right? When you've been born in one country and you've moved across so many in such a short period of time, you just have to adapt. You adapt, you embrace, you become part of it. That for me is essentially what globalization is about. Globalization for me, the opposite of globalization would be just what you were talking about before, which is, you're living in a country where you're building walls around it and you're isolating yourself from the rest of the world, So globalization is, it's free movement, free trade, free experiences. It's about embracing all cultures and really understanding the value that each one brings to the table, right? Now, from a diversity perspective, I think the word diversity is a bit overused at times. For me, I prefer inclusion. I think inclusion is a much stronger word, and it means more about what it's trying to say. Inclusion for me means that anyone and everyone, regardless of anything, is included, right? And I'm not going to go down the path of, your typical stereotypes. It's not about that. It's just about that, everyone and anyone has some form of difference that's unique to them. And for me, diversity means embracing your inner difference, your inner uniqueness, and allowing your inner uniqueness to form who you are as a person. We shouldn't need to have diversity and inclusion workshops. We shouldn't need that. We should just be having inclusion workshops and allowing people not to talk about, what their disability may be, or what their gender or orientation might be. This should be about what is it that makes you special and what is it that makes you unique that you want to share with everyone, I think if everyone can focus on, what their little special piece of zhuzh is in the world, I mean, what a happier place we'd all be, right?
Definitely.
So abandon stereotypes. Everyone embraces their piece that I feel is, unique to them and just their specialness.
How does Alliance Abroad and your work in particular contribute to these inclusion efforts?
I think just the nature of what we do. It's what we do every day, all day. I think for me, what I've been reflecting on recently is, as a cultural exchange organisation, I was asking myself, what do we do in order not just to offer opportunities to people? How do we reinforce or further educate or go deeper with our own staff? Because again, it's just an assumption. It's an assumption that you think that way. So for me, my next big project in 2020 is about reviving, and reigniting, that spirit of inclusion within the organization. That for me is going to be my big project.
Where do you think the efforts to promote inclusion should be focused on? Do you think they should be focused in the business world in certain industries? Do you think it should be even focused on earlier when it comes to college education, before that? Which do you think requires most focus?
I think my point is that I think the more forced, the less authentic it actually is. So I actually question why there needs to be even mechanisms to do that. I think in an ideal world, if I could start everything again, it would be from a pre-K perspective, that as babies, our parents encourage us to be who we are and what we want to be and how we want to be, right? With no conforming stereotypes that have to go against it. And that's followed up in kindergarten with the teachers there that's encouraging people to, embrace their inner creativity or their inner person, through school, through college, through everything. I mean, just a few days ago on Sunday when we were doing the seminar series, when I was talking with some of, the delegates here, one of the things that we did actually talk about was, when you go to an interview, it's always about like, what's your own personal brand, and more often than not, that personal brand is what seasoned professionals are telling you how you should be, right? And everything I've been talking about is like, please don't be what you think you should be who you think you are. And so if you're in an interview with someone and you're pitching for a job there, it was just like, I think we did the first opening lines was, hello and welcome to such and such a place, Thanks for coming today. How are you? Typical response, I'm very well, thank you. The journey here was fine and isn't the weather lovely? As opposed to, I've just had 4 cups of coffee, the adrenaline is running through me. I'm feeling super stoked right now to be sitting in front of you and I'm really excited about what's going to happen. I think that person is going to be the person that's going to be remembered by that hiring manager. That's the person that's going to say, oh, I like them. And if you don't get the reaction by sharing that, then the question's got to be, are they the kind of people I want to work with? Is that the kind of organization I want to be? So I think each individual corporation and each individual brand, they've got to be honest with themselves about who they are as an organization and what type of talent are they hoping to attract. And that goes beyond job descriptions and psychological testing, It's like, what's the realness that's there? And can you spot that? I don't know if anyone can.
What are the qualities in the people who apply to visa programs? What are the qualities that stand out to you most when you are working with them?
I mean, the easy one, that one for me is always motivation, yeah. Within the first 30 seconds, you can tell right away what the motivation is to do a program, like the programs that we've got, And that motivation more often than not is because, I want to discover, I want to explore. And when I say discover and explore, it's not like I want to go and explore a new forest. It's like I really need to discover new things in my mind that I haven't yet seen. And the whole purpose behind exchange programs is about being able to be exposed to business practices from another country, from another world. So maybe the curriculum that's been taught in school is not necessarily the same type of curriculum that's being taught in the country that you're interning in. And so therefore you start to learn more things from that. And I mean, the magic for me comes from when you have 2 different cultures that come together. They have a common interest, and let's just call it field of study, And when those 2 ideas come together, what you should be getting is an explosion. It's an explosion of creativity that comes from it. That's what drives innovation. It's about different perspectives coming together to create something that's different and something that's new. So when I'm seeing people who are interested in these programs, I'm automatically thinking in my own head, what do they really want to do from this, and do they have the motivation to be successful and to make it work for them?
And when it comes to sharing common interests, I know that sometimes what people are concerned about is language barriers and other cultural barriers that sort of prevent, well, that sort of, I guess, hinder, not so much prevent people from sort of finding
Sure.
their commonalities. How do you think people can transcend those barriers?
Well, I could answer that in a couple of different ways. I mean, what came up for me when you said that was like, I mean, look at the tech industry right now, you know? The languages that you're speaking there, is Python and C++ and all. I mean, so those are common languages that people are using today. So they don't need to understand what is the language that my mouth speaks. It's the language they're operating in. So there's one piece. So, I mean, I'm intrigued about, okay, so take that from, we're in a very technological world right now, but it's probably going to be nothing in comparison to what it's going to be in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. Is that something that's used as a common means of communication that transcends foreign language? Maybe. But from a more traditional sense, I just feel, again, speaking the language of the person that you're with, again, you get closer, you break down barriers. You talked about walls before. You're smashing down walls if you understand specific nuances that's unique to different languages and different cultures. And I'd also say as well, I mean, like, I chose, my fluency is in Danish. Of all languages in the world, there's only 5 million people in the world that speak Danish. I'm proud to be one of them. But I know what Danish sounds like. So when I'm on the subway in New York City and I hear someone speaking Danish, I'm going to go talk to them. Because there's only 5 million people in the whole world that speaks this language. So why wouldn't I engage with them? Why wouldn't I talk with them in that sense? So from a language perspective, if everyone has the opportunity to learn other languages, I say absolutely do it. Absolutely do it.
And I guess this is a bit more of a particular question for at least me and for all my peers in my generation. Thanks to the efforts of your generation and people like you.
You're going to tell me you think you know how old I am?
I guess what I mean is that
I'm joking.
Yeah, college students like myself have access to so many opportunities where we can broaden our perspective. To reach the global level. And with so much out there, how can we seize the opportunities and make the most of them?
Well, I think we all are, and especially your peer group, you're probably the most connected peer group ever, right? When I do surveys about why do people want to do our programs, how have they heard of them? The most common response is because of word of mouth. Right, so, I could say things like, like review sites and endorsements and, testimonials, but that's old school. What it's going to come from is if someone has a really great experience, they want to talk about it. They do want to talk about it. You go on Instagram tomorrow, you're going to see exactly what half of the room has just been doing in the last 24 hours, right? And you're going to see either some great positive images that come from it, or maybe some not so positive images. So, for anyone that wants to do a program like mine, I would always be, like, talk to people who've done it. Talk to them who've done it, because you're going to believe them more than you're going to believe me. I like to think that, I speak with an authentic voice. But, I'm also 25 years older than you, right? So you might be, it's like, well, I don't know if I believe him, But someone your own age who's maybe experienced a program like that, that's the first go-to place. Did you experience it? What did you think of it? What tips would you give me? How should I approach it? If you were going to do it differently, how would you do it differently? I mean, those are the common questions that you always hear.
What would you recommend to college students interested in pursuing related careers in globalization, international relations, and being able to engage on a global front?
One thing I've seen a lot with education since when I was at school is that, when I was at school, you needed to choose what you wanted to study before you actually got to university. And I was talking to Marissa on Sunday, who was one of the group, who was telling me that she's actually doing a major which is called Make Your Own Major. Yeah, and this was blowing my mind. I'm like, so apparently it's a bit of a pilot. I think she's at Stanford actually. And she was telling me about all of the different subject matters that she's getting involved in and how, you know, her program, you know, her studies will evolve so that she ultimately chooses what it is she's going to major on. And I think that's an amazing evolution that it kind of reinforces everything I've been saying, right? Which is all about, do I really have to major in something that you're telling me I have to? Or can it be one of those things that as my life experiences grow and as my mind grows as well, you know, I open up new parts of my mind that were previously closed. And this is a direction I really want to be going. And thus the education system supports that and encourages the individuality and the creativity and, you know, just the entrepreneurial spirit, you know, that gets ignited through something like that. So, I mean, I see that as being, that would be a great thing if it was rolled out everywhere. Can you imagine?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that would be crazy.
Because definitely with
Did I answer your question? I don't think I answered your question, did I?
you got around to it. Is there
Okay.
anything you'd like to elaborate on that aspect?
I think one of the other things I would say is that people that have come on my programs, the common thing that everyone says, you know, and most cynical people roll their eyes when you say it, is like, oh, it was a life-changing experience, right? And it does tend to be overused a lot. But you know, when you see that on a day-to-day basis, and people are telling you that on a day-to-day basis, then I think there's part of it no longer becomes an urban myth, you know, that it's actually reality as well. And I just kind of trace it back to, you know, like me personally coming out of, you know, a little working class town in central Scotland and being able to step out into the world. And when I did do that, you know, as a 16-year-old, when I did a high school exchange in France, that did open up my world. It did change my life because it changed the way I thought about what my future was going to be about. So I think when people do these types of programs and they're supported through it, right? So this is not just an irrational decision that's made one day that says, okay, I'm going to give up everything and I'm going to move to the opposite side of the world because I can. You know, that's foolhardy. You know, but in a supported and balanced area whereby you have the support to allow you to be successful so that you can spend your time and your intellectual discovery, your cultural discovery, as opposed to, you know, having to be street smart, you know, and be wary of your surroundings and so on.
Yeah, and I guess this is sort of like one of my last questions, and it's a bit more personal. You started off as a camp counselor. Did you ever imagine that you would that life would take you where you are right now?
No, I had no idea. I had no idea at all. No idea at all. It's just, it's interesting how, you know, as one door opens, you know, another one closes behind. And what I would say is, like, especially in my early 20s, I had so many doors that were opened up to me that I hadn't expected, nor had I planned. In fact, on Sunday I was telling them a little story about, it was in the late 80s, 88 it was the summer of 88, and, you know, working as a camp counsellor, the organisation I worked for went bankrupt towards the end of the season. So it was like, well, okay, what am I going to do next? And I was working alongside some Danish, Swedish and Norwegians, and they all said to me, well, why don't you come to Denmark at the end of the season? I'm like, sure, why not? What should I do there? And they said, well, you could be a DJ. There's an English language radio station there. And I thought, oh, that's a great idea. I'd love to be a DJ, you know? So fast forward 2 months later, I'm standing in front of Radio Voice, is what they were called, in Copenhagen. And I walk inside, and then I get this realization. I think to myself, what are you doing? What exactly are you doing right now? And the lady behind the counter looked at me and she says, let me guess, you speak English, you want to be a DJ? I said, yep. She says, you and 25 other people that walk in here every single day. And I'm like, okay. got it. Thanks very much. You know, and I walked out and I was like, okay, that was just a bit foolish, wasn't it? And then I looked and I saw that the next doorway was the entrance for British Airways, the airline. And I thought, well, I got a jacket on, why not? And I walked in there and I went to the British Airways office and I just said, hi. I was just in the area and I was just wondering if you had any jobs going, are you hiring right now? To which they said, yes, we do actually. Would you like to complete an application form? And I did. And, you know, I was with them for 11 years. So it's like, you know, sometimes the craziest things, like wanting to be a DJ, for someone who has no DJ experience, who's never, ever, ever even attempted to do that, sometimes, you know, it's all for a reason, you know. That path is a mysterious one.
I know the road of life seems to have multiple different paths. I guess it depends on which one you want to choose. But I think our time is about up. But thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Thank you. I appreciate it too.